member there.
Okay,
And with that, Mr. Chair, I will defer to you.
thank you. Do we need to do a formal roll call or are we good there?
I'm
Okay,
keeping track.
we're good.
Yes.
Okay. We will call the meeting to order. It's 9:04 a.m. Steering Committee of Elected Officials. First up on the agenda is our minutes from the previous meetings. Can we get a motion to approve our previous minutes?
Move to approve.
Okay, I've got a motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion regarding the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, I guess we're moving right into the public hearing on the PTAC recommendations. Scott, are you leading that?
We will do our, we will drive from here.
Okay,
And what is before the body today is a proposed amendment to the countywide planning policies specifically for housing and within the context of the recent legislative acts that have directed changes in GMA. As many of you remember, when we updated the countywide planning policies in 2022, we left this one on the sidelines because we saw the legislature was making changes and the steering committee agreed to come back to it. We've now done that. The Planning Technical Advisory Committee, or all of your planners, have put something together, and we are, and by the way, there's a staff report and the language that has been distributed separately to you. Tate is going to go over a couple of slides to outline some of the highlighted changes, and then we will open it for your questions, and you may open it for public comment. Tate, can you go ahead?
Yes, thank you. So good morning, steering committee. Bongo, can you hit the next slide, please? So Scott kind of touched on this already, but these were deferred in 2022, and the amendments now reflect those legislative requirements. We drafted these CPPs from May through August and gathered feedback from this body, PTAC, this body, stakeholder groups, and the public. We held a steering committee meeting virtually in August, and we didn't hear any concerns or requested changes that were voiced. And so after that meeting, we created the final version on August 23rd, which was posted on August 28th. That version 3.3, is what you should have received, both as a clean draft and as a track changes version. Since that draft was posted, we received potential amendments to be considered by this body. I was going to defer to Scott, Director Chesney, to go through the procedures for our recommendation and the potential amendments in consideration. Those potential amendments are in the next slide. So Scott, I'll hand it off to you unless you wanted me to go through those potential amendments.
That's fine. The process, the veteran steering committee members will understand your role is to take testimony as a public hearing body, deliberate that among yourselves in terms of what that testimony is, and then make a recommendation to the county board for some action. If in this case you are comfortable with what you've seen, that action would be a recommendation to approve. If there are still concerns, we would suggest rather than taking a negative action, to simply hold this open and direct staff to address those concerns and bring it back at your November meeting. And Mr. Chairman, Tyrrell from the city has her hand up.
Tyrrell, you want to go ahead?
I don't mean to have my hand up.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, we would open ourselves for your questions or those of the community. And again, the more detailed documents were posted on our website and sent to steering committee members on behalf of PTAC.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I see Terry has her hand up.
Being in 1.2B,
it has low in there twice, low, comma, very low, comma, low. I don't know, probably just one low is really what was meant to be there.
Correct. Yeah, that might have been just a typo on my end for the PowerPoint. I'll double check the actual policies. The addition in there was that we were missing the very low, one of the income brackets that Commerce had, and so Commerce just pointed that out, and so we were inserting one of those missing brackets. But I apologize for the typo on the slide.
Thank you, Terry. Do we have any public comment? Is there anybody from the public who is on to?
I'm looking at the list right now. I'll check with Tyrrell. She has her hand up again, but I don't see anybody else.
Okay. Oh, I think she just took her hand down.
I think, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Okay, well, if there's no one from the public.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I have one more. Paul Kropp.
Oh, okay. Is Paul on?
I'm trying. Go ahead, Paul.
By golly, you're right about these damn controls. I had to hit unmute 3 times. I just want to be clear that the recent distribution that came to the public for the draft version is the 3.3 version.
Tate, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and that is also the one. It's on our website as well. That is version 3.3.
Yeah, well, maybe it should say that. I do understand the addition in the glossary. Is that the only thing? So what are the other items that have come up that are not reflected in what you're commenting on, what you have received that will be carried over to the hearing in December, to be finished in December?
Scott, can you take that?
I'm sorry, I got interrupted a little bit. Paul, can you repeat, please?
Well, you've narrated that certain comments have come in after 3.3 was published. You've mentioned one, which was in the glossary, but is there anything else?
Oh, go ahead, Tate.
The potential amendments are on this slide right now. We have those grammatical corrections, which I can read, those minor changes, and then the major change, which should be considered. But those were the comments that we received from agencies and PTAC discussion.
And I can address that major change at least a little bit. You can see a number of our communities are requesting to change the should language to may. We did some comparable research with our peer counties in Washington, and not many of them use this approach. And so our concern, and this is entirely the steering committee's level of comfort, is if these are all moved to may instead of should, they pretty much lose any impact of being policies, and they become sort of aspirational statements. So we wanted to put that request from our cities in front of you and let you consider whether you thought that was reasonable. And obviously, Tyrrell is here, Lisa is here. If any of them wish to speak to that, we can easily recognize them. Yep, there's Lisa. Hang on. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So the thought process and why, and I can't speak to everyone on this list, but certainly the reason why Liberty Lake felt that it was appropriate to add the may is there is an obligation when there is a should consider at a minimum a list of policies. Some of those policies just are not relevant at the small scale for the smaller jurisdictions. And so we felt that it was still, when there's a statement that we should consider it, we then felt that there was a need to demonstrate that we did consider it and determined that it was, and that seems like an additional burden on particularly the smaller communities. So that was our logic in making that recommendation.
Carol, did you have any comments?
I don't,
My name's on the list, I think, just because we agree, we understand that the smaller communities are not as they do not have to comply with House Bill 1220 in the same way. So that's all I have.
Okay. Okay, is there additional discussion? I see Commissioner Kearns.
If I could just get some clarity, I mean, should is not shall. I mean, most of our conversation usually revolves around shall and may. There's not a heck of a lot of difference between should and may. I mean, neither of them is a mandate or requirement. It's just should.
Right.
So I guess that's kind of where my confusion. Should is pretty close to a may, isn't it? I don't know what the legal definition is of should in this context, but I mean, because again, like I said, most of our conversation is around shall and may. Can somebody just maybe give a little bit more clarity to
sure.
the strength of should in this context?
Right. You've identified really the three variants here: shall, should, and may. In looking at other countywide planning policies around Washington, especially the peer counties, the term may turns up in places where there are options for big cities, small cities to do something differently. The should is used within the policy language as things that are in fact desirable by the county group to say, but not mandatory. And then of course you hit the shall ones, which in the countywide planning policies that are before you, the shalls are ones that have been identified as being directly related to GMA, either through the RCWs or the WACs. So there's that three-level version that's in there.
So,
but
is,
again,
is there anything preventing any of these jurisdictions from essentially acting as if it did say may? Because should does not imply a requirement, does it?
Right. And I don't want to speak for Lisa, but to paraphrase, she said if it should, you're asking us to consider it and say it's not relevant for Liberty Lake, and then they're done. I'm sorry, Lisa has her hand up again. Let me go back to her. Go ahead, Lisa.
And the specific instances that I had concerns about was when there's a statement should consider at a minimum. That at a minimum adds a more compelling requirement, I believe.
If I could chime in briefly, there's that language does not change any of the requirements for members of the jurisdictions. It's just us saying, or it's just the region saying you should consider this range of things. It's the same level of requirement, which is to say you're still not required to do it. No Spangler Rockford's going to have to do these things just because we say you should consider them at a minimum or anything like that.
Another option, if the steering committee feels it worthy, would be to break countywide planning policies into tiers. Large cities or maybe the metro core, big cities versus small, and then the small towns, and lay out some of the principles that the bigger cities really do need to consider from their GMA requirements, and leave the smaller ones in a separate basket almost.
Hey Scott, we got Larry with his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, in terms of legality, there is instances where should or may should be used. And I understand that the PTAC committee, we've kind of talked about it, and I believe that they want to, legally, in this regard, just strengthen the document, to not have a perceived, requirement or to extend something. So, I mean, the language does matter in this regard. So I'll leave that up to the rest of the committee, but I believe that's what the PTAC was doing within this regard.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Heather Troutman has her hand up. Go ahead, Heather.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. Just some clarification. These are recommendations from the PTAC as a body to the steering committee of elected officials, and I appreciate the county providing some oversight to the process and assisting us as staff in this process. What we did do is provide comment throughout the development of the draft, including several of the committees submitted written comment to the county to this issue. It was a timing aspect of trying to provide the document availability to the public and being able to incorporate this language into the draft. And so that's put us in a position, as indicated in the slide, that these are edits after the draft was made available to the public. So I don't think it should diminish the recommendations of the PTAC, and to address commissioner concerns, requests, and to support Liberty Lake as well as the Valley and Cheney, is that this language recommendation of a may allows for a smoother flow of smaller communities to look at the options specifically around housing, whereas in the should, it creates a burden, a demonstration to these smaller communities that we considered and potentially have to document why particular implementation strategies were not being adopted by those local agencies. And so as part of, for example, our comments on this draft, several of our communities drew out sample policies from this draft and identified how it differentiates between consideration of a small community of certain aspects of these policies versus a larger community. So I certainly understand the concerns of Commissioner Kearns about the similarity, but each of us has attempted to provide documentation of how, again, a may allows for local control with regards to implementation policies and does not require an additional burden of work and documentation as to why certain elements of these policies are not ultimately potentially being adopted by those communities. So I hope that addresses both the timing of this recommendation by the PTAC as well as the request of the members of the PTAC to make some modifications. And I would just suggest, I don't think we're looking to overcomplicate the draft. I don't think tiering or identifying different levels of community size for purposes of adherence. I think this was at the simplest level that we thought would be appropriate and be a very simple change to address the concerns of the communities within the county. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to chime in briefly on this, Scott. To be clear, this is the change from should to may is not a recommendation from the entirety of PTAC. At our previous PTAC meeting, we knew that this was a lingering concern, and we asked everyone who wanted to sign on to this to do so. And the names on the screen are the folks who decided to do so. I will just also briefly reiterate that should language does not require jurisdictions to document that they considered something, that there's no additional requirement with that.
And from our perspective, again, this is brought to you for your consideration and direction back. So I see Paul would like to speak again.
Well, thank you for that. From the perspective of the public, the document simply lists a recommendation and a list of names, absent any discussion as to the reason for it. It was a bit of a head scratcher for me, but the context provided by Lisa Key and Heather Troutman makes perfect sense. That is to say, as a rationale. So that's all to the good, and I would hope that somehow these the discussion of the three verbs, as well as the rationale for the may option, might be somehow documented for the public so they understand why this is happening.
That's a good comment, Paul, and obviously, or I should say obviously, in view of the steering committee's intentions today, if there's a consensus to move to the may instead of should, we will make that change and post it on the web and make it available to, or notify everybody that's interested in this as soon as possible. Joel, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just noticed a couple elements, and I just want to make sure on all these elements it talks about where it says the shalls, and it says such as, and so there's a few like 3.3, 3.7, some others. I just wanted to clarify, does that limit those options, or does it still allow other options? Because we want to be creative with housing. There may be new options that come up during this planning period. That doesn't limit us to future options because it says such as.
Such as does not limit future options. You could replace such as with for example. So it doesn't limit any jurisdiction from
Thank you.
pursuing other means.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see
Yeah.
any other hands up.
I see. Oh, is Paul Kropp's hand back
Oh.
up?
Paul, go ahead. Nope, he just withdrew. Oh, wait.
Okay.
Amber, hang on. Amber is here.
Oh.
Let me find her. Amber, hang in there. I'm looking for you on the screen here. Please go ahead and speak while I'm looking for you.
Amber, you want to go ahead?
Oh, there we go. I found her.
Is she on?
She is. She should be on our screen. Where did you go?
Commissioner Waldriff, can you hear us?
Sorry, I wasn't able to see anybody or communicate there the whole meeting. So now I can see everybody. Yay. So I'm sorry, was there, in reference to this should may, I appreciate the information from Heather and Lisa. Thank you for that. Was this sent out with the new changes then, just in the last couple days? The potential amendments?
If I might, I believe the change from should to may, what has been in there for the get-go, we might have added the typo corrections, the minor changes. The should to may, I believe, should have been whatever the original report was.
Okay, so what you sent out, I was just wondering if there was a packet that had been sent out, because I emailed and got information from you, Scott, but
Right.
was there an actual packet sent out to the whole committee?
There was. It included a staff report and the actual CPP document as amended, a red line version of that, as well as being posted on our web.
Okay. Do you know when that was sent out? I am very, I've gone through all my emails and I have stuff that you sent me that I asked for,
Okay.
Scott, last week, but
Right.
can you just let me know when that was sent out and by whom?
I will look. I did notice last week, I think, that there was a typo in your email address and we corrected it, but maybe that happened after this first packet was sent out. I will check on it for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I received a packet with the meeting notes or anything, so I was just frantically looking through all my email this morning.
Oh,
And so
understood.
I'm able to go online and find the documents, but I didn't get any meeting notes. And so I'm gonna, just for the record, I tried to abstain, but I wasn't able to speak on when we voted earlier. So.
Minutes.
Right, because I never
Okay.
I never got any minutes, so I just want to abstain from voting on those for the record, sorry. So what you're suggesting, Scott, is that you are going to, you and Bongo after this meeting would then post any new changes out to the public? Is that what you were just saying?
Yes, if the steering committee wants to continue this hearing and discussion into your next meeting, we would take any direction from you. If the steering committee wishes to make a change today and simply change the shoulds to may, and take that action, we will make the changes in the document and get it ready for recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah, one of the things, Scott, and Kitty just mentioned it in the text, but there were some issues where none of the city representatives directly received the packet. Our assistants did. So we got it, but it did not come directly to us. And so I think there's just might be some issues with the mailing list or something going on. So.
And I regret that inconvenience. It was something that I hope most of you don't have to go through, is losing a key administrative assistant or a clerk. It has been a scramble to pick up all the pieces that she did to keep track of the administration of the steering committee and the planning commission. So I regret that we dropped the ball on that little bit, but we'll get back in shape before November.
Thank you, Scott. I see Joel had his hand up first, and then we'll go to Terry after that.
Yeah, so I just posted, I apologize, trying to frantically without interrupting the meeting, but I received the packet on August 28th from Lori Carver.
Okay.
Advance for our previous meeting, so it did have the amendments in there.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
Okay.
Thanks, Joel. Terry?
Yes, so two things. I did receive the packet also on the 28th, just wanted to say that. And then as far as the should and may, I am supportive using the may language. Legally, there is a difference when you look at a legal definition between should and may, and should has an obligatory element to it, and may is more permissive. And so I wanted to support that and just give you my 2 cents there. There's been so much discussion about it, but I was hoping we could move forward with that today and change the language. So Scott, if you could guide us there on what needs to happen, we could move forward with more discussion or just a vote.
Yeah, Terry, if you want to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion then that we adopt and change, make this major change of all should language to may. I think the statute is clear on when shoulds and musts and shalls happen. So that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we
Mr.
have
Chairman,
further discussion?
I missed who seconded.
I did originally.
Larry.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any further discussion related to this amendment? I see Paul Crop has a hand up.
Go ahead, Paul.
I'm not sure you can hear me, but I'll
Yes.
just say this. Number one, can it be clear that I am testifying as a member of the public and need to be recorded as a participant? And
Paul,
second,
we can do that.
party of record, thank you. And just a comment on the PTAC memo. There were actually 2 versions. There was there was a version of the original version didn't have the suggestions at the end. So there was 2 versions, and I followed that myself closely. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Is there any further discussion from committee members? Terry, is your hand back up?
It is back up. One thing, should the motion, I guess I was thinking about the motion, should it be to adopt both these minor and major changes that are on the screen here, or are we taking those separately?
Well, we can go ahead and just vote on the motion that's on the table, and then we can just take a second motion to continue on.
Stand on the change to May.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing, oh, did I just see a hand go up? Nope, I'm not seeing any further hands, so speak up if I am missing you. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the proposed major policy change amendment, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. That amendment is made. Is there another motion related to amendments or possibly a continuance of the hearing?
I'll move to change the grammatical and minor amendments or add them.
Okay, we've got a motion to include the minor and
Second.
the typos.
Second.
We have a second. Was that Rod?
Yes.
Got it. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, motion and a second. Do we have any discussion related to the amendment on the table? I see no hands. All in favor of approving the proposed motion, the amendment, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. So at this point, Scott, I guess the question is, do we make a final decision on this, or do we continue it to a date? Is that correct?
I think the fact that you had 2 unanimous votes, I would suggest the steering committee could easily make a recommendation on the document, on the CPP document as amended, and recommend that the board approve it. But that is your call.
Commissioner Walter?
So I guess my only question is, when did the should to may language get published to the public? Just trying to make sure we have make sure that was out long enough for folks besides Paul Kropp, who's very active, for other folks to be able to weigh in if needed. So I just wondering when that was put out to the public. So, because that's my concern, just making sure we have a good process where if we're going to make a change at the last minute or propose a major change, that we allow for proper, public input time.
Thank you, Commissioner. And let me just say, I share that. I looked yesterday at early morning and I did not see the agenda posted publicly. And so I wondered the same question.
To our best knowledge, all the packets were posted on August 28th. And I don't believe we amended the agenda after that.
Hey,
No,
your
I
hands
don't.
up.
Yeah, to address Commissioner Waldriff, there isn't a draft version of the CPP with those shoulds changed to mays. So if we wanted more public comment on that, we would make these amendments and then put them out to the public for their comment, and that would be another iteration of this draft. The conversation here was we wanted to hear from this body if changing those shoulds to mays was desired, and since it is, we would make those changes. So I would just say no draft language has been posted with those shoulds changed to mays.
Councilmember Klitzman.
Thanks. I think what Tate just suggested is more consistent with the typical public participation plans that we adopt on land use things. So I think we have to put it out for another notice period.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Cooper.
Yeah, just quickly, the other thing at the beginning of the meeting when we talked about taking a roll call, I would really like to have a better roll call made of who is here voting today, especially when we're making both minor and major changes. And so I don't think we should gloss over that just as a kind of procedural. It would be best if we did an official voting member roll call, if you wouldn't mind doing that.
I'm Mayor Cooper, happy to do that. I've shown Michael Cathcart, Larry Bowman, Terry Cooper, Jason Upchurch, Tim Hattenberg, Rod Higgins, Chris Kaminskas, Josh Kearns, Kitty Klitsky, and Amber Waldruff. Did I miss anybody?
Yeah, is anybody missing from that list?
And I heard no nay votes, so we can record everyone as an aye vote. I just put it down as unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, so we would look for a motion then. Is that
Mr. Chair, I think what I heard, and I was clearly mistaken in thinking this might have been part of the packet from August. Since it was not, both Mayor Cooper and Council Member Klitsky are right, and Commissioner Waldruff. We should, in fact, amend our document, repost it, and bring it back to you at your November meeting for action.
so we just need a motion then to take that action, correct?
If you choose, I don't think so. I guess if there was a motion, it would be to continue the public hearing until your November, your November meeting.
Just to be clean, I would look for a motion to do that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? And the motion is to continue this hearing discussion to the November meeting. No more discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That will be continued.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Steering committee members. Our next item is the implementation portion of the countywide planning policies for housing. You've seen this in a couple of iterations. It's called the HAPT tool. The PTAC is bringing forward I guess I would call it a recommendation to the HAPT prime model or method. It's important to consider that what PTAC is bringing before you today is a discussion of that method and methodology, not so much the numbers. If you recall, the OFM population numbers were broken down by jurisdiction earlier. This board recommended that, the county acted on that. This HAPT recommendation and the land capacity analysis are going to make that an iterative process. So the numbers on the screen are starting point numbers. They are not final numbers. And those will come back potentially in November. And as we look at our future agenda, maybe at the January meeting. But I'm going to have Tate and Bongo just walk through quickly where PTAC landed on this HAPT tool.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and dive right in here. I'll try to be quick. I know we're short on time. So we are coming to you with a recommendation to adopt a HAPT methodology. I'm just going to briefly run through. This is sort of a reiteration of last month's slides, and I know some of the members were not able to attend owing to technical difficulties. In any event, there was some discussion from SEO at previous meetings about wanting to factor in additional local data analyses, whatever the case may be. So we wanted to lay out sort of a better understanding of what HAPT currently accounts for in terms of local data. So within there, we have the housing needed to eliminate rental cost burden. That's specifically for Spokane County. Housing needed to eliminate homelessness, again, specifically for Spokane County. And then the housing needed to accommodate future growth. That is based on the adopted population projections that went through PTAC, yourselves, and the Board of County Commissioners. And then I'm just going to briefly run through what we can and what we cannot change. So starting with what we cannot change, countywide housing needs by category are unchangeable. So for example, and let me just briefly note here, this is a summarized version of HAPT. These are not the final numbers. Those are going to be in the slide after next, I believe. So basically just look at the colors. Don't worry about the numbers for this one. But the total housing needs are unable to change. So for example, the overall units needed for the 50 to 80% AMI, that has to stay the same. That's impossible to change. The total housing needs for each jurisdiction is, again, has to stay the same, is impossible to change. What can be changed, methodologies can be adopted, essentially that shift where exactly that housing goes. So the total housing needs have to stay the same, but it can be moved exactly where it is. So that is the latitude we would have for a potential custom methodology there. And then just briefly get into our reasoning. So PTAC is recommending method A prime. We've discussed this before. This is the commerce update of method A that avoids allocating low-income and emergency housing to rural areas. PTAC did not identify any major flaws with A prime. We believe it offers a clear path forward and gives us time to work on the population allocations for round 2 that Scott was alluding to for potentially the November or the January meetings. And Scott, with that, I might kick it over to you. I can skip to the next slide with the numbers, or we can sit here, whatever you like.
I'll just reinforce that what PTAC is sending forward is a methodology. The numbers will change. And since we, as a group of planners, could identify no specific criteria to create a method C, A prime gives us a framework, and as Bongo had in that previous slide, it still allows for adjustments within the income bands among the communities as long as we meet our overall commerce allocated totals. So we are comfortable making the recommendation to you to make this recommendation to adopt A prime to the county board, recognizing that it's going to be, again, an iterative process of how those numbers ultimately lay out. And that'll be early 2025, quarter one, quarter two.
If I could just briefly add on to that, what Scott's referring to, so there will be some changes to the population allocation. Once the methodology is adopted, I don't believe we have plans to change the HAPT methodology itself, but the numbers will change because we're going to be relooking at the population allocation.
Go ahead, Bongo.
All right, so with that, I will go ahead and kick it over to the numbers here, and then, let's see if I can get it. All right, and then Scott, with that, I think we're ready to queue it up. So I will leave that to you, unless there was something else you wanted me to touch on.
No, I think this is the first cut, and recall the methodology is coming from the Department of Commerce, and we're plugging numbers into that as we go, and so some of those also relate to the population projections, which, as you may remember, were adjusted in a sort of a practical way, because for some of the smaller areas that might have been on a downward trend for population, we were not assigning them negative growth or anything. We moved them at least to zero for now. And so that's why you see some of the zeros in here for Fairfield, Latah, Spangle. We would expect to work on the county side, expect to work with those small towns to help them create a growth strategy that may end up being reflected in this chart at any rate. But this is the current layout of what we're seeing based on the methodology. And I would defer to the steering committee members or, again, Mr. Chairman, anyone from the public that chooses to comment on this.
Thank you very much, Scott. Do we have anybody from the public who is on to speak to this?
I don't see any hands up right now.
Yep, I do not either. Okay. Well, then if there's no public comment, is there any comment from committee members? Commissioner Waldron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify then, because this is the first time, I looked at the information on method A prime. So basically what it does is what it would do is it wouldn't allocate any very, very low income or sheltered, for folks who are unsheltered out in rural designated areas. So that's why when I'm looking at the screen right now, I see 0 for PSH, permanent supportive housing, or 30 to 40%, as well as emergency housing on the right, far right.
That is correct. Yes.
Correct? Okay.
0 to 50 does not get assigned to rural in this methodology.
So then what this does is that then you need to assign those units across the county in other areas. Is that what the next step would be?
So you're correct. This method, that adjustment is already here in this table. That's already been done. It's already in the numbers.
Okay, in the thing online, in the document online, it had 2 different method A prime spreadsheets that looked like this, but they looked about the same. Was there a reason for that?
I can speak to that. So when we put out the staff report initially, there were some couple very small errors that we had transcribing the numbers. So we sent out this revised version, which is what's on screen now. It's very slightly tweaked, but we did want to put both, just so you know. Oh wait, this original one's very, very slightly different from the ones on screen now.
By a couple numbers, I didn't hardly see any difference.
Very, very minor.
Okay.
Yes.
And
this is how it is allocated. But Scott, you just said that the work needs to continue to allocate out the different housing by income band.
Right, and that's a factor of. This is a factor of using that OFM number and the population allocations that were done earlier this year. The next stage of filtering or refining that is based on each individual jurisdiction's land capacity analysis in which it most simply put for, say, the city of Spokane is, if they're responsible for 25,000 residents, do they have sufficient land at their planned densities to accommodate 25,000 residents within their boundaries? If that is not the case, and they can only accommodate 23,000, then that 2,000 has to filter back out of that and go into the unincorporated UGA column. And so we're looking at those cities to make that next cut on where they're going.
And so I know that it looks like from the report, there was a discussion about taking into consideration like access to lower paying jobs, but that was really difficult to quantify. Is that the PTAC looked at that and it was just kind of too difficult to come up with data on that for our county? Was that the
So there were a couple things.
conclusion to that? And I know we also talked about transit. I do worry about certain areas of the county that don't have transit access, and just whether that should be, and again, that's why I looked at the PTAC. You guys are the technical experts in how you might crunch those numbers.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that comes back, right? Maybe Deer Park comes back and says, well, we want to serve this many people, but we're struggling because of transit access to serve these other folks. I don't know. I'm just wondering how that comes into the equation.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So in regards to the low-income jobs thing, that was done largely by Kevin Frybot at the City of Spokane, who, Kevin, if you feel the desire to chime in on that, please just raise your hand. We can get you in there. But then in regards to transit, we didn't end up doing that for a few reasons. One was that it seemed, let me rephrase that. There was a lot of concern about that methodology among PTAC. I think a couple reasons being it would largely put a lot of the housing just into the city of Spokane because that's where all the transit, I shouldn't say all, that's where a great deal of the transit is. And also speaking to other communities who've gone through this process, King County notably, they informed us that using a transit weight sort of provided a perverse incentive for people to get rid of transit as a way of lowering their low-income housing allocation, which we of course would want to avoid. But does that answer your question, Commissioner Waldron?
Yeah. I'm sure it'll pop back up again when each jurisdiction comes back with what they think that they can accommodate, right?
Yeah, and that's the second part of it is, everyone's going to look at their LCAs, and we're going to do that second cut of the population allocations, which we will, if SCEO votes in the affirmative on this, we would then plug that into A prime and go from there.
Hey, Bongo, could I add a little bit to this?
Please.
Okay, so just real quick, we did speak to STA quite a bit at the PTAC level about their transit planning, and one of the shortfalls in looking out 20 years, one of the difficulties that we identified was that their planning for high performance transit lines is responsive to development too. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg discussion. Does the transit come first? Does the building come first? It was really difficult to resolve that into a 20-year planning horizon to say high performance transit will be in these areas as versus these areas. It just wasn't possible to map that. That isn't to say that anything here is not precluding a community itself from discussing transit in the realm of their own comprehensive planning and to their own capacity. So that ability is there. And then as far as the jobs, the low wage jobs versus low wage residents, we had some very good data for that. What we don't have is a very good way to apply it. What weight do we apply to that number? And also it kind of lumps larger jurisdictions in at the same magnitude as smaller jurisdictions, whereas we'd have a number for the city of Spokane. Well, the city of Spokane is a third of all of the UGA. With one number there, it's just not refined enough. And again, that doesn't prevent one jurisdiction from doing that kind of planning. It just, we couldn't find a good way to apply that to the HAPT. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Commissioner Waldron.
Yes, and I agree. Like, we don't want to preclude transit from going to future areas by just assuming it's not going to be there and then not building. So, I get it. I get the chicken and egg. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick point of that. Spokane County has been in contact with STA, talking to Carl about better aligning the STA planning process with the 2026 to 46 process for the county, so that we have a little bit better opportunity to plan for transit in areas that we do anticipate growing, rather than them having to react to that directly. That's not the way they normally work, as Kevin pointed out. But they've shown a willingness to come to that table and at least talk about it in the context of overall county growth. So I think that's a positive step.
Okay, thank you, Scott. And a question for you, Scott. If we do adopt, let's just say we adopt method A prime in November, is that locking us in terms of the total number, not putting aside the income bands, but just the total number of housing units? Or would that be updated with whatever the numbers are in the LQAs when those come forward?
It's a very valid question.
Scott, I can take that one if you'd like.
Because the other piece is, we haven't discussed what changes could or could not occur with the UGA broadly that might affect the whole conversation.
Correct. And that's where we're headed for November and January. But the biggest point is we need a foundation. We need a starting point so that we can start doing that more refined iterative process. And so we want to have some direction from the steering committee on HAPT A, if not today, then certainly by November, because if this methodology keeps moving around, none of us can merge that with our LCA or the UGA discussion that the planning staff is going to start in late October over here at the county.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sorry, Commissioner Cathcart, if I could just, Councilmember Cathcart, if I could just briefly add on to that. In terms of the numbers you're seeing here, so the top line numbers under the total, so you have the 75,000, 19,000, 5,700 going across there. Those are unchangeable completely. Those are just, we have to do those because that is our growth rate. So we have to fit that number. And then on the left-hand column here, as you go down the total for the jurisdictions, Airway Heights is 5,007, 2,535 for Cheney. Those are going to be set by whatever our second round population allocation is. And just a brief note, after cycling this through PTAC a number of times, I will just provide my personal thoughts that I believe this is, ripe for recommendation if the SEO, of course it is up to you ultimately, but I would highly suggest or encourage, in my professional opinion, giving a recommendation today so that we can focus more fully on the population allocation round 2.
Okay. Is there further discussion or motions? Mayor Cooper.
I would agree. We've had some really lengthy and great conversations about this, and I think A prime seems to be where everybody landed. And I would like to move forward unless there's a compelling reason not to, because we can't move on to the land capacity analysis, which is really going to get us, where we have some real useful information. So this is more of a starting point. So I guess I'd like to make a motion to adopt the A prime.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt method A prime. Is there a second?
Second, Higgins.
Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, Rod. Okay, is there discussion related to the motion? Not seeing any hands. Okay, seeing no discussion.
There's no one on the public list with a hand up either, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, no one from the public, no discussion here. All in favor of the motion to adopt method A prime, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Then are we moving on to the workshop discussion, Scott?
Yes. Depending on time, we generally try to keep these to 60 to 90 minutes. If people can stick around, we have information on the interlocal agreement from the subcommittee pursuing tribal participation. Heather has been really doing yeoman's work to administer that and work on that. excuse me, we sent out in the proposed language changes. We've also got that and can put it on the screen if you'd like. But if I can put Heather a little bit on the spot, I would ask her to lead through how that subcommittee reached a recommendation for you. And this is, again, this is a workshop. We will take your feedback, work with that subcommittee as the fall winds upon us, and we would anticipate bringing this for a public hearing in November so that the board can act on it before the end of the year, which would let the tribes participate starting in January as voting members. Heather?
Thank you very much. There's a little bit of a delay here on my video, but thank you very much. Steering Committee of Elected Officials, as indicated, we've been coordinating with both the Spokane Tribe of Indians and the Kalispell Tribe of Indians with the assistance of the Department of Commerce, including Tribal Liaison, as well as our local representative, to communicate growth management requirements for the counties and the cities moving forward, as well as the opportunity for engagement with both tribes. The draft before the steering committee represents the feedback from not only the tribes, but also from the Department of Commerce to help improve clarity as well as application of a proposal to integrate both tribes into the body of the steering committee of elected officials, as well as how that representation would be selected by each of the tribes and the rights within those two groups for formal participation, including voting. We've met several times with the subcommittee as well of the steering committee of elected officials to walk through the proposed changes. Out of this came some additional understanding, including that both tribes sought clarity that they are participating, but they are not as tribal nations subject to the Growth Management Act, and that they are desirous because of the need for communication and coordination on a variety of elements, from cultural resource protection, environmental protection, to coordination to the tribes in each agency for moving forward in a coordinated manner. So with that, are there any questions with regards to the draft and any of the proposed changes in the document at this stage?
I'm not seeing hands or anything. Throw up your hand if you have questions. Not seeing any.
I'm not seeing anything on the public side, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, so there's no action we need to take, correct?
Correct.
All right. So we
Correct.
will just move on to our next item. The
Very good.
LCA update.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Heather. This will be brief. We wanted to kind of remind you, the steering committee, as well as our PTAC colleagues, we're all working diligently on this equation. The Spokane County and the city of Spokane have made pretty substantial progress. Cheney has produced already a draft plan of their land capacity analysis, and we're looking at refining that. And what we're finding is, and I believe you saw some comments from a consortium of development professionals, and we received it late last night. And if it didn't get out to you right away, I'll send it to you. There are some concerns that some of the assumptions we have made in terms of density, persons per dwelling unit, and particularly in the use of partial lands for development rather than totally vacant lands, that the methodology may not reflect the market in a meaningful way. In other words, we could say we've got room for 34,000 units, only to be recognizing land that has no legitimate chance at developing at higher densities. And so we're looking at those comments, and we will be bringing that back to you. However, the challenge will be, and we may even have to ask for a special meeting before November if we make progress on this. The methodology we're using was recommended by you to the county board. The county board adopted it, And that methodology dates itself back to the 2013-2016 settlement agreement between the county, the plaintiffs, and FutureWise. And so if we're going to take a different approach to it, we will have to bring that methodology back to you for an amendment and a change. And if we do so, we'll do it with documented evidence of the market has changed from essentially 2013 on how this was calculated then. So that's the biggest change in bringing this forward. I know our team is down to decimal point precision on looking at lands and densities and units, but we're going to have to take a look at that and say, do we have the right set of rules to actually do this? So we will share those documents with you and your planning teams, and we will look for some comments and reactions to that in the coming weeks or so.
Great, thank you, Scott. And then calendar discussion.
We sent out a brief calendar. We're working with the PTAC directly on this so that, for example, at the November meeting, and by the way, I do need to ask you something. November 20th, turns out, is a week that our county commissioners are off. It is a week where they're not holding any meetings. And I don't know if the cities or others may be taking that 2-week Thanksgiving break as well. But if an alternate would be either ahead of that, November 13th, or we could push to December 4th. We will send out an email to all of you and your admins to check your availability if we can move that meeting, and we'll do it expeditiously so it gets on your calendars without any more confusion. That said, at that November meeting, we're looking for a public hearing on the ILA for membership, the draft LCA reports, which may be a methodology report, and then a workshop on the countywide planning policies for climate and resiliency. All of us have engaged our professional consultants. We're working on that element for GMA, and at the very least, we'll have some idea of what that scope of work is going to look like and some progress on that in November. In January, we're tentatively saying a public hearing on the land capacity analysis and the population allocations, potential public hearing on the housing allocation results, and then the first of the UGA work sessions after planning staff grinds through the numbers starting in October. We'll have something to share with you in January, and we would continue that over. Probably the entire March meeting would be a UGA discussion leading to potentially a May recommendation from you to the Board of County Commissioners. Past May, or frankly, once the steering committee is done with that UGA recommendation, that's pretty much your heavy lifting task for what we're doing. So we'd be coming back to you with the various GMA elements, talking about how we coordinate with our cities on that to share the various parts that have to go into that. And perhaps that would be either May or July, there'd be a public hearing on the urban growth area. So that's what we have on your future agenda. Like I said, we've shared that with PTAC. We're looking for comments from you specifically, if there are other topics that you would like the steering committee to consider over these next handful of meetings. But Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Okay. Are there any comments, questions from steering committee members?
And if not on the spot, if things come to you later on, just send them over to me, and we'll recognize those.
Okay, I am not seeing any hands. Do we have anybody now on the call from the public wishing to make a public comment?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We have
Paul
nobody
Kropp
here.
does have his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Paul, I didn't see you. Go ahead.
So a question about on the transportation dimension, will the PTAC be tackling regional levels of service, multimodal levels of service?
Yes.
At some point?
That will be one of the elements that will come back, partially as a result of the UGA discussion, because unlike past considerations of the urban growth area, this one we must put into the context of GMA concurrency, and that's going to include transportation, urban services, schools, fire, water. And so all of those will come together in that discussion about the UGA.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Anybody else from the public? Seeing, hearing none. Okay, and there's nothing for the good of the order. Our next meeting is November 20, well, though that will get changed to either November 13 or December 4. And with that, we can adjourn this meeting and see everybody next time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everybody.